conversations on today's topics to help connect our community. We're really excited because we've been having a blast doing this connector series where we are talking to people from our community that actually connect our community and really exploring some of those attributes. And somebody I've connected with unwillingly over the course of my life has been Jeswin Thomas, my little brother, who I've grown up with. Jeswin, how are you doing and how excited are you about today's conversation?
Why unwillingly? Like, shouldn't it be like, you have put
Forced upon.
God attribute in there, bro? Like, we met at church. Come on.
You don't get to choose your family, but you get to choose your friends. And I don't know, even in Brown Church, you just get forced into these friends groups, and then you just grow up together, right? Like, that's something unique about us, right? But no, I am so grateful for our friends. Yes, exactly. I want to set the expectations here. But some friends that we've made over the years that I've got to know through different ministry things, and obviously they're launching a great business, is Joanna and Jessica Finny, and they are the founders of Chechi's Chai. Ladies, how are you doing? So good to have you guys on.
We're doing so great. It is incredible to be here. We're huge fans, so this is awesome.
My mom would love to hear that. She's like the only person that listens to this. She like gives me the side eye sometimes. She's like, "I heard your podcast," and she think you were talking about me. But we're so happy to have you guys on. We were talking a little bit before we hit record, and just there's so many great connections. The Tennessee connection is amazing. So, ladies, let's just kind of dive in. Like, where are you guys from? Tell us about who you are and your background.
Yeah. So we're Tennessee girls. We were born and raised. Actually, Chechi was born in India. So she was born before our parents moved here to Franklin, Tennessee, which is a really random place to end up. It's a suburb of Nashville, so like we're 25 minutes from the city. But it's such a sweet area. It's side note, it's one of the wealthiest counties of the United States. We grew up pretty just like surrounded by all these like nice things, like pretty spoiled of just like, the sceneries of Tennessee and just like what it's like to grow up in a county where like, yeah, they put a lot of effort into the tourism, like, and all the things. So we love growing up here in the southern part of America. And then, so our parents, when they moved here, they wanted to find community. So they started a South Asian church here in Tennessee, the first one in the middle Tennessee area, specifically focusing on South Asians. So grew up in that environment and also grew up in that Caucasian, like, majority environment in our schools and our community outside of that. So that's just kind of like some of the context of growing up here, and we haven't left. Nashville has kind of been where we've stuck around. I moved a little bit to New York City, which I love there as well. But every time we move out or anytime we leave on trips or anything like that, we come back and we're like,
Yeah,
we love Nashville. We're grateful to be here. So
I was
nice.
going to say, I've heard Nashville is booming. I know a ton of people are moving down to that area. The last time I came down, there was cranes and constructions everywhere. So as native Nashvillians, I don't even know what is a is it Nashvillian? Is it Nashvillian? Is it
I want to say villain.
I don't know.
To our deaths.
But how do you guys feel about this? The boom, you've taken over of Nashville. How are you guys feeling about that quickly?
dude, PSA, no one else needs to move here. Truly. I mean, if you walk into our schools, our churches, like everyone's from California, like Texas, up north, like everyone has come here, which is kind of cool to see because a lot of like, we were talking about this recently, a lot of people come and they're just like, we don't really know what brought us here, but we're like feeling the move of God or, we're feeling like there's opportunity here, things like that. So we're like, hey, welcome. It's the place to be.
Nice.
Two different answers from two different people. I like this. All right. So one is don't come and one's glad you're here.
Yes. Love that.
Colin.
And Joanna, like I know we've connected before, doing the Beholding Initiative and some ministry stuff. Have you been in Tennessee your whole life as well?
Yeah, you know what? I've threatened to move to Dallas several times, but praise God, He has kept me grounded in Nashville, Tennessee.
Plenty of space here in Dallas. Plenty of space.
I don't know about that. I keep telling people, I'm like, it's crazy because in the Indian community, anyone I talk to, I'm like, hey, so like, what's next in life? Their first answer is, we're moving to Dallas. And I'm like, Tell me why. Yeah.
Right, right.
We'll take your word for it. We know it's not.
No, I'm still figuring out why. I have a wife and their family, and everyone is here, so free babysitting. That's the reason. That's what God called us to do. Um, but this is awesome. Like we have this Tennessee connection. Got a lot of family in Tennessee. Jasmine was born in Tennessee. We were just talking about how your dad used to come and speak to our church, and I'm so old that I remember all of this stuff. And so I love when we talk about community. Everybody knows everybody, right? And there's this connection that we can find in literally minutes of talking with you guys. And so um, we wanted to explore that a little bit too, right? Like to understand not only just your business and what you're doing with Chechi's Chai, but like how that incorporates into community. So can you talk? You talked a little bit, Jess. You talked about your cultural identity and how maybe there's a little bit of a hybrid there. So could you tell us about the Brown community in Nashville? Like, what does that look like, and what was your experiences growing up in it?
Yeah. I think this is a fun question for both of us to answer because we both grew up in very different vantage points with this cross-cultural life. So for me, when I was born and raised here, my first instinct was jump in, assimilate, be the most, coconut girl I could be, which I say a lot, but it truly was one of those things of I just wanted to fit in and be like the other people. Obviously, we went to the Indian church. We served there our whole lives, from the moment we could. We were always serving with our parents, but often there was resistance there because I was man, all my friends, none of my friends go here. Even though these people look like me, I don't feel connected to them because I don't relate to them or I don't resonate with the things that go on sometimes in this side of the community. So I often just lean on or will run to, my friends that grew up in America, their parents welcome me and they teach me things that I wouldn't have known otherwise of the way that it is to live in the United States. So there's extremes of that, right? So I live in this I'm putting away anything that remotely makes me look different for most of that, elementary, middle school, even into high school, some of I want to just keep this at home. And I want to be that kind of I say this Hannah Montana. If you guys have know the concept of just living that almost dual life without with embracing both, enjoying the Indian food, but then not wanting to smell like it, something then something that I can have family and friends and it doesn't take a lot to find connection, but then I'm well, I want to find ways to be like them. So yeah, that's kind of the ways that I grew up in that identity.
Yeah, and I think my resistance was flipped because I very much embraced being Indian, and I don't know if it's an old eldest child thing where I kind of saw the struggle of my parents moving here, and I have memories from them walking to Walgreens to get medicine when we were sick and just random things, and so I think there was a part of me unintentionally I hardened my heart to the concept of assimilation, and so when I went to school and stuff, I did have to wrestle with the questions of why am I so different? What is this tension that I'm feeling? And even into college, asking what does it look like for these two realities to live together? But yeah, our resistance was on opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's cool to be able to do this and build this cultural hub now, and to bring these two perspectives into it and to build a space where everyone's invited. And it gives us two different areas of territory to cover with that.
Yeah. And to add to that, to talk about the Indian community in Nashville, because all these big cities, you imagine people are there, every kind of people group, but in Nashville, so many Indians, not a lot of Christian ones. So there was that piece of our identity of okay, we're Christian Indians. So when I went to school, I had 5 Indians counted on my hand of in my grade. And so whenever I would talk to them, and we would do the cultural festivals or bring samosas and things like that, introduce it to our friends, they would almost disown me. They'd be I don't see you at temple. Or I don't, no, you're not a real Indian. You don't wear what we wear, in terms of jewelry sometimes or things like that. But they would disown us for the fact that we didn't do the Indian things sometimes. So it was hard. It comes from both sides, right? There's almost this
a disowning of some sort from both ends of the spectrum. But yeah.
Man, that's great, context there. I actually want to do a deep dive now that you sort of said that. So it seems like there's a tension with assimilating into, the normal American culture. But now there's also an equal tension to assimilating with your friends that are Indian. So where did you find your identity here, right? It sounds like there's a crisis brewing. No pun intended.
No pun intended, truly. I think for me, this is my first memory of like trying to find the balance. For my high school senior prom, I wore an Indian outfit. So I wore like a lehenga. I've never worn that in front of my friends. I hadn't ever like really brought again my culture into that side of my life. And like that day, my friends and their families were just like blown away. Like sometimes, to a further degree than I'd like they were like, touching me, like petting the dress, and I was like, of course, it was weird. But like the concept of like they were like, "Oh, this is so beautiful. Like, why have you not ever shown us this before? Why have you never like why have we never seen you in something like this?" And I would remember going home from that and being like, "Man, like they celebrated that so easily." And I like hid that and from them. Like I didn't even give them the chance to celebrate it and to embrace it. And even then and my Indian friends at prom were like, wow, like we never thought of doing this. Like that's super cool that you did that. Like, they embrace it too. So there's almost a side of like that boldness and the confidence of just like, I'm not sure that this is gonna go over well. Of like, there's so much of my life that I've lived this way, but when you kind of flip the script and you're like, I'm gonna try this out because, kind of out of a desperate want of like not wanting to feel this way all the time, of not wanting to hide this side of you all the time, and seeing the way that people like, want to see all parts of you. And the people that don't, like, you don't necessarily, want to be there. It's a good like decision maker of like community of like, hey, if you can't embrace all of me, then what are we doing here? So
Yeah,
that-
I love that concept of just like assimilation almost speaks to I want to belong to something. I think inherently all of us have this feeling and desire to be a part of something, right? And maybe that's how God designed us. So that like how do you lean into that? Because it sounds like you've for you, it sounds like you're not leaning into like your culture a lot, especially with the business. And Joanna, was that your influence to say, hey, come on over, like embrace this? Like, how did you wrestle with those things to come to like where you guys are now, to leaning into your identity, even to create a business off of it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to use that term leaning in because I think that's the power of doing this together. Because even to present day, we will discuss concepts and events and things that we're doing and ideologies, and we'll have to almost remind each other and teach each other and lean on each other for that context. Because kind of like what she was saying, I found my identity by taking the route of diving into ICPF and doing the very Indian thing to connect with people that are like me. And so we'll often say, like, I am not as comfortable as she is when we walk into a fully non Indian space. She takes the lead in those spaces. Whereas, like, when we're in a more Indian space, I feel more comfortable and in my own skin. And so that dynamic, I think you can see it in our relationship and in the way that we're leading our business, but also like understanding our own identities, where as sisters, we're having to lean on each other and our wisdom from the two sides. And so, like, I am such a believer that even as a community, this is something we need to do because I think most of us will pick one or the other and just stick to it. And oftentimes that's where offense breeds. That's when this like conversation of like this racial tension starts to grow versus like the way that we're trying to teach ourselves to see it from a business standpoint, but also as people is it's not one or the other, it's both together. And that's also the most glorifying thing to God as well, is that when he sees the diversity of the world coming together in unity, right? And I think that's part of our identities and why God has made us South Asians, and put us on track to run a business that's screaming from the rooftops about identity and storytelling, is that we're able to invite everyone to the table, and be a part of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say when, Joby and I were even looking at Chechi's Chai, specifically, one phrase kind of stood out to both of us, which was sort of your tagline, which is bridging cultures, and bridging cultures, bridging community. So really, like, could you sort of explain that when you were kind of talking about, the bridge and the different cultures all coming together? Could you kind of explain like what led to that phrase and what do you guys intend to communicate there?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is like the shortest way we can explain like how we got here and how, like, we always want people to feel when they come and experience not just our chai, but the environment that we try to build in any of our pop-ups or even in conferences when we talk to people and explain this. I think the biggest thing we want them to feel and understand is that, like, we see them in their story, we see them in their realities, and it's not always easy. It's exhausting. Like, it really is. Like, even talking about this right now, and I'm like remembering these memories and things, I'm just like, man, trying to live like so many different versions of yourself or trying to embrace so many different things, like, it is tiring. And I think a lot of people will fall under that pressure of just kind of being like, I give up. I give up, and I don't want to, find the balance of my cultures. I don't want to build community. I just want to stick to what is easy, what's close to me, and all those things. But kind of what we were touching on, the connection piece of, like, in our community, in the South Asian community, what we pride ourselves in is that connection piece. And, like, we love to find different ways that we can connect, and seeing how that kind of overflowed in other communities. Like, when we saw people in our pop-ups and they come in, approach us, and we're like, hey, what's your story with chai? Have you ever tried it before? Have you given it a try? Come on, come on.
Nice. I like it.
Good. Pun intended.
So when we get to hear them speak, it's like, wow, like, look at how, like, in our different cultures, we might have different versions of chai. Like, maybe that traditional cultural piece for you is different. It's not a cup of tea. Maybe it's something else that you guys, and want to embrace. And, like, seeing our, like, pushing forward of our culture empowers them to do so as well. And then, like, suddenly we have all these people around us that are like, wow, we want to, be a part of this almost of a movement of, like, embracing these things.
That's so fascinating because not everybody does it, right? They like I love how you describe there's people who love to just sit back, and this is a conversation I feel like I've had with so many people over the years where they love to just sit back and accept the standard quo. This is what community looks like if it's broken, if it's, this is working for me or not. But where did that heart come from? Like, how did you see, maybe what was the disconnect that you saw that you said, hey, I need to do something about this, and where the motivation maybe came from that? Like, can you describe the problem you're trying to solve, and how did it stem from your surroundings?
Yeah. So there's so many different angles to answer this question. But I'm going to keep it to two main things. I think, kind of like what Jess said, I think South Asians or the Eastern culture prides itself in being a collectivist society where we need each other, we know each other's business, all the things. But what I've grown to notice is that though we call ourselves that, we're not so easily vulnerable with each other. And for me, like, the depth of community and the depth of relationship comes with that sense of, I'm going to let you see me and all of me, and I want that to be where we form that connection. But oftentimes we find ourselves just kind of parading our accolades and our successes, and that's what you know me by. And so there's, like, a little bit of a broken system there where then we are then putting pressure on one another to do better, versus growing deep in our relationship. So that's, like, one side of the things, I guess, that we noticed. The other thing, and this kind of ties into the name Chechi's Chai that we tapped into later after the fact. But I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, a lot of my Chechis and the Chachins, they would often tell me, oh, like, don't call me Chechi. Just call me by my name. That's fine. And at the time, I think there was some sort of, like, rejection of that cultural piece where it felt kind of embarrassing, or like, oh, like, don't call me that. That now when I look at it, I'm like, man, you are rejecting a massive piece of our culture, but it's more than just the title. It's more than just, hey, call me Chechi. It's not entitlement, but I think the more you sit and really think about that transaction, when someone younger is calling you Chechi or a Chachin, it's more than just my sister calling me that. It's other people her age that call me that. What does that mean? What does that title actually represent? And often for me, like, especially being Christians, we can think about it like a discipleship model where you're looking at someone and you're calling them older brother, older sister. That name carries with it an expectation of, you are the one paving the path before me. I want you to speak life into me. I want you to be the one to speak wisdom over me. And I want you to, yeah, like, pave that path. And so For us, I think it's almost just always uses the word reclaiming. I think it's this process of reclaiming what we once rejected and saying, hey, part of this element of define, like Jobin, you said, like define the problem. I think one of the problems is that, yeah, we rejected our culture at some point and we left it on the wayside and said, you know what, we're better off without it. But I don't think we can fully dive into our relationship with the Lord without fully embracing the identity He's placed on our lives on this side of eternity.
Hmm.
And so I think part of that problem that we're seeing and what we're hoping to do through the business is also saying, hey, this isn't supposed to be embarrassing. It's not supposed to be shameful. Reclaim that name. Like when someone calls you Chechi or a Chachin, wear that with honor and use that as a motivator to serve the community that you're in. So yeah, just a couple of pieces of the problem that we've noticed. Again, be here for hours if we start talking
Yeah.
about it.
I mean, I feel like we should take offering now. I mean, that was fire. Pass around the bucket, guys. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's amazing.
But that's 100% true. I think, Jobin and I, we reconnected with some of our old church folk that we haven't seen in so long. And immediately they just said, hey, what's up, Justin Chach or Jobin Chach? And just like, we were both like, whoa, I haven't heard Chachin in so long. Especially going to a more multi-ethnic church now. It's just not as much of a thing. And then Jobin, I don't know why you never made me call you Chach, man. I hope you're
I don't know why. But
twisted.
it's a great point because now I have two kids, and my daughter calls my son Chach, and it's just part of it, right? And it's one of those things where we did reject it in the beginning. I was the oldest of my cousins, and so we didn't want them to call us. We didn't want to feel old, or we wanted to reject our identity. But I love the tie-in to discipleship. Like there's this mentorship aspect, or even like spiritual formation brewing in relationships that I don't think we have. There we go, brewing again. But that's one of those things that I absolutely love about not only just the business, right? But like there's a picture into biblical principles, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
are the aspects that you were talking about, Joanna, with vulnerability on one side and then discipleship on the other side. You talked about, hey, you guys want to weave it into Chechi's Chai in some sort of way. So maybe before we dive into how you intend to do that, where did the love of chai even start? What is your first memory of having a cup of chai, and where does the love for that stem from? Let's start there before we get into other aspects.
Yeah. Obviously, as I feel like Indians that don't drink chai around like 4 o'clock, like it's just like a tradition that we all grew up with. Like it's across the board. You talk to anyone, they're like, yeah, of course I know what chai is. So like even for our family, like we have that tradition of drinking chai, and our amachi played a huge role in that. So like even like in middle school, I remember like coming home and uh that would just be part of her routine is she knows when my bus is coming, and so she would make the chai when she knows I'm coming home. And so as soon as I walk through the door, it's like she had chai ready. And I always tell people the story. So a little background, my Amachi and Apache, my dad's parents, they were pastors back in India. And so she would use that time. Oh, this is like everything's tying together. She would use that time as kind of like discipleship with me, where okay, I would sit with her, like with chai, whatever, we would crack jokes, whatever. And then he would start telling me stories about their time in India and about like the ministry and her faith. And one of the lines that she would always say is, I cannot grab you by the hand and take you to heaven. Like that's on you. And I tie my entire life back to those days where it was literally the crossroads of it was chai and faith, and like that was where I feel like my like love for the Lord really deepened. And so yeah, chai has such a pot. It represents my faith truly, like in my story, because that's where I really felt like the Lord like planted that love for Him and His Word in my life. So that's like my earliest memory of chai. And so then Amachi passed away 2018, and I quickly realized, you know what, someone's got to make chai in the house. And so I took that on, and so now whenever people come to the house, I'm immediately the one that's being voluntold to make the chai. So yeah, that's my earliest memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a part of that somewhat. I was way younger when like we would come home and drink chai, I would drink and like run away, probably. But yeah, in high school, I started working for Starbucks. So I worked at Starbucks all throughout high school into college, and I just, in Nashville, the coffee shop scene is huge. And so I just like came to find that like everyone was just like obsessed with coffee, like it just became like such a craze. And I just kept serving chai tea lattes, and I just would be like, oh my gosh, people think this is really chai. Like people are convinced that this is as good as it can get. And I remember like every time I'd just be like, oh, you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what you're missing, like, and like in some ways, like I would enjoy it too. Like chai tea lattes. I'm only going to label it that because that's what it is. Like it's its own entity because it doesn't even mean, it means tea latte, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, do you get annoyed when people say chai tea latte?
We will correct them every time, not out of a judgment of just kind of like, let's change that narrative, right?
Right.
But I do call Starbucks chai tea lattes because that's the shame that they should carry. But like they have a flavor. They have like this milky thing that they're just like calling chai. And so I remember that was part of the like problem, defining the problem. It's like we just saw this being a craze that like all these Americans love chai tea lattes. And it just was so westernized, so like disgraceful to what we know chai to be. And so when she got really good at making chai, and then she started doing a couple like baby showers, like, kind of scaling it to where like there were people asking for bigger quantities, like an Instagram was made at some point called Chechi's Chai. That
Like, guys, before this was official, I printed stickers at Staples and I would put them on cups as a joke, like purely as a joke.
yeah, and then
Best things in life start as a joke.
yeah, and then the like kind of the story of like the forming of the business happened in when I was in college, my sophomore year. I was a business major, and I was in my like required entrepreneurship class. And in that class, we had to come up with a business idea, and I was just being, to be honest, like pretty lazy. And we had like always, whenever she would make chai for people, they'd be like, "Dude, chai karas, coffee shop's so big here. Like, why don't you chai kara, chai kara?" And so I just went up there and I was like, "Oh, guys, you like coffee shops? Well, I have a product for you, like kind of pitched it to them, and they really like caught on to it. We like fleshed out this whole business plan and pitched it for a competition. And then we had seed money given to us because we were like awarded, first or second place. And so then we had an investment into this that we were kind of like, oh crap, we've got to do something with this. There's something that like this is accountability aspect there. So yeah, we kind of like got funding through the school and then started some pop-ups, and the rest is history. But yeah.
That's awesome.
Love that. So do you do the whole, pour it and like go like really long and you know what I mean?
At home or at restaurants, I'm just like pretending that I'm a chaiwala, but at our pop-ups, we don't really serve. You're like, funny enough.
Feel like pay extra to get that experience and be like, I'll look for
Right,
it.
that's like the hibachi of chai experience. Like that's what we're going for.
Well, funny enough, a couple of the weddings that we've been to, whenever the dance floor opens up, now all of our friends have made a dance where it's just like, we'll pour the chai.
You made it.
It's a thing. I know.
I love it. I love it. This is so cool to hear because it's like kind of bringing you back to, you're wrestling with your identity, but then you find it and then you tap into it and you can see what happens. It's like this beautiful picture of what the gospel is. Like we wrestle with our relationship with the Lord, and then he brings us home, right? And you can see what can happen through that actual community. And I love that you guys are tapping into that. So like from a South Asian cultural experience, where have you seen like maybe the positives, where you've seen people actually like lean in and maybe discover themselves maybe? I don't know if you've seen like positive experiences now that you've ramped this up and you leaned into it and you found it. Like what was the impact to other people that you've seen after you've launched this?
Yeah. I think speaking specifically into the South Asian space, again, I think we're recognizing that going back to what we were saying about the rejection of a culture, I think I've heard the most from people just going, oh my gosh, y'all are starting a chai business? And like, again, knowing our background, being raised here, I was 3 when I came here. So like this has been like majority of our context. So for them, it's like jarring to see 2 Indian girls who grew up here who are like claiming chai and saying, hey, we're going to represent our culture and our people group, And so I think we're slowly seeing this like awakening of, wait, like, why did we put this on the back burner? Like, this is actually a right thing for us to celebrate and enjoy. And so with that, it's been really cool to even just have the opportunity to go into like faith spaces with like InterVarsity and things like that. And people will be like, hey, can you come do a live chai experience and talk about identity? Like, what are the nuances of this concept of making chai, and how does that speak to Christian identity or cultural identity? And can cultural identity also inform your Christian identity? Like, all these different questions that now I think the South Asian community is asking, which is really exciting for us to see. And like, our prayer is like, as this next generation of kids grows up, that they're able to then continue to preserve a culture and continue to celebrate it. But yeah, to answer your question, we have been hearing a lot of these whispers and questions that hopefully one day we can continue to kind of flesh out and say, hey, maybe you do some workshops or teachings on this, but we'll see where that goes.
Hashtag make chai cool again. Right,
Yes,
feelings.
exactly.
Like people are seeing this, they kind of are just like, yo, like let's make Chechi cool again. Let's make chai cool again. Like let's make sure people know that we actually love this stuff. Like it's part of who we are.
I was gonna say, even when you were talking about the live chai experience and some of the questions that have been coming from it, I know you already mentioned some of the vulnerability and discipleship and even like the identity experiences. Kind of talk through like how you guys use Chechi's chai really to bring those values sort of to the forefront, and even get into some of those deeper connecting conversations with others that you've encountered just because of this business launch.
Yeah. I can kind of speak on the space where we like are starting to like do pop-ups and like interact with face-to-face customers that aren't just South Asian. I think that we've seen like that storytelling piece that comes with this really play into people being able to connect with us. And as we like kind of show the kindness of the Lord of like, when you go buy coffee somewhere, when you go to a restaurant, like you're not necessarily being met with like overwhelming, like, oh, can I know your story? Like you're not being met with that often, but I think that's something we really value is like that thoughtfulness with every cocoa tribe we sell, every product that we put out there, anything that we like have our brand in. It's like, hey, like we want to make everyone feel seen and known through this, not just for the best parts of your story, but for even those like more shameful things, the things that you may not talk about. So even in those small customer interactions, like you have no idea how like, opening it is or welcoming it is when people are just kind of like coming up and you're able to like be like, hey, like have you ever had chai before, like I was asking, or like if you have, like tell us a story of when you had it, and like is your family connect, those kind of things. So just like that. And I think Chechi had some things to add to that.
Yeah, well, to that point, I think there's also the reality that a lot of non-Indian people have a very stereotypical experience with us, where like that one experience they have or that one TV show that they watched is what's like burned in their heads of like, oh, this is what Indians are like. And so I think I have been so undone by like the reaction people have had when we've gotten to have those conversations with them. And they're, you just kind of see their eyes like open and they're like, whoa, like where are y'all from? Yeah, sure. So I think that has been healing too. This again goes back into the duality of this business of being front facing on the Indian side, but also on the non-Indian side, to be able to represent our culture well, where we're able to say, hey, actually, like as Indians, to be able to claim that, yeah, number one, we're Christians, but also number two, like we love people and we want to make sure that like we're not a people group that stands far away, and that we're able to be frontline when it comes to this conversation of community and connections, right? So I think that's really good for us.
Yeah, I love that because it's like you tap into your identity, but you're creating this like welcoming space. The hospitality component of this is so cool because now you're actually connecting people and the attributes of a connector, and showing that hospitality to others. So what do you say to that person who does feel maybe disconnected, and they maybe start to feel disconnected from their culture or want to separate from themselves? You've got the experience now of kind of intertwining things. What do you say to that person who might shy away from their identity, and maybe some words of wisdom to that person?
Yeah. I mean, from the whole talk, like we've been there. Like that's the biggest thing is like our story, it has not been perfect. It hasn't been that from day one I was like, brown and proud, but like the reality is we're just so lucky to have such a rich heritage and culture to lean on. Like, I think I realize that more as I explore the things. It's like, yeah, it's easy to disconnect and easy to just be like everyone else, but the like, just the richness. I think the rich is the best word because I even use it to describe chai, right? Like when we talk about chai, we don't want it to be bland. We want it to be like, just black tea. Like we add spice to it. We add like our own flavor to it. And that's what I think like when we show up to the world, it's like we have, we got the spiciness in us. We got some like, we have want to contribute that like not everyone else has and no one else with the reclaiming, it's like no one can tell you that you are less of who you are. No one can tell me that like even when those friends that I had in middle school told me that I wasn't brown, I was like, well, you can't really tell me I'm not. You can't really tell me where I'm from or what I have to carry. It's like we have that to be able to, pull for the rest of our lives. So
Yeah, yeah. I love that because I think about when you say the richness of your culture, sometimes just because we're always surrounded by brown people and all of our stories are really similar, we don't think it's unique, right? Well, my parents were immigrants as well, and like they struggled, and it almost seems normal. But then when you actually expand to the community and get out there in the world, we don't realize how crazy all of our parents' stories are movies, right? It's literally these amazing things. And when I tell people, like I got a lot of country guys in my small group in the Dallas area, and I go to a multi-ethnic church, and they're like, "Wait, you're Indian and you're Christian? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, it's so crazy that the world doesn't know our story, and I think we just need to value it a little bit more sometimes, and I don't think we do, and maybe that's why we distance ourselves because it's so out of the norm, right?
Well, there's also parts of our culture now that we're kind of in this conversation. I was thinking like, I've seen my parents, randomly go to like an Indian shop, right? And they see someone there, don't really know who they are, get into a conversation, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, come over. We could have like chai and like a samosa or something, right?" When's the last time I did that, right? Like when we're talking about this redemption of culture aspect, right? Like even if right now, like let's pull out our phone and bet who you are and see blah 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 blah, and for good reason too. Let's make sure we don't invite over a serial killer or offensive kid, right?
Yes.
Totally valid, Joby. I don't have children yet, so I don't know what that is like. But I was thinking maybe this spawns more of a question. What are those ways that we can like reclaim and redeem some of these cultural aspects that might be missing from our particular generation that we've seen in previous generations that we can really kind of bring to our community, today, wherever we're at? So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I've got one. I don't know if you guys know Food Diaries. You guys know Favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. We got to know them through this business because they have their page Food Diaries, and I think we had an Instagram live one time and we were talking about this concept of just like, how often we just like push things aside. And like I talked specifically about like the smell of food and people were like, God, like why do we care so much? But like, we should try to be cleanly. We should try to be like, presentable. Oh, this concept of like cooking Indian food and like asking our parents questions, being curious and being like, hey, can you teach me how to make fish curry? Because like this weekend, my mom made the most buzz fish curry. And I'm like, I want to know how to make that. Like, I want to be able to like, pass this on to generations. It's like we don't want this to end with us. We want this to be something that we can spread, not just like wide, but like deeper into like my kids. I'm not going to be able to teach them great Malayalam, but I'm going to try. Like those kind of things of like, how can we ask questions now that we can plant seeds now for the future and for others? So like food or like even simple things that we can learn now, like I think that's important and a great way to stay connected.
I love that. I mean, Jasmine, I think we should start a business, Orange Fingers, just so we make butter chicken, and then let's just run with it, man. We could totally do
We're
it.
gonna have butter chicken where we're at, all right? We're gonna make some Naan Saad chicken curry, all right?
It's trying to encompass the whole entire country. Anyway, I love that. I think we're tapping into something because I think sometimes we get, I don't want to say over spiritual, but sometimes when we think about community and sometimes it becomes a buzzword where really to develop relationships, we need to find the commonality, what really does connect us together, and it opens the door to that deeper relationship, right? Because sometimes these relationships are surface level, but then you tap into an identity and find that commonality with food, or I'm at the Indian store, or whatever it is, right? Like you find that connection, and it just opens the door for an opportunity. to create the community that I think we are all intended and designed for, right? Um, it's so cool. I'm so encouraged by like what you guys are doing. Um, how like how can we support you? What are some things that you would maybe give some advice to people who are like, hey, I want to be a connector like my Chechi's over here. So like, what would you tell the next gen who's like looking up to you to really make an impact on the community?
Yeah. I'm actually gonna tap into some scripture that I really, really enjoy. In Ecclesiastes 10, this is one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. It talks about farmers that wait for the like opportune time to plant. And essentially the point of that entire chapter is you're never gonna have the perfect time to do anything. And so I think for me, if there was someone listening that's kind of had that like burden of like maybe even realizing that they don't have a great community base, maybe the Lord's calling you to be the community builder. Maybe that's the thing that He's pointing out to you, and understand that like yeah, there's not going to be a perfect, like, I've got enough money to host people or I've got the perfect space to host people. Start with the one person that you meet. You know, you might meet them at a coffee shop, at a restaurant, wherever, at church. And even if it's just a follow up, I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with is you meet someone awesome, you have a great conversation one time, and doing that follow up even feels like a task. But what I would say is it's worth it. You know, go do that thing. And don't wait for all the all your ducks to be in a row. Like, don't do that. Do the thing as soon as you feel the burden for doing it. And even for us, like I can say, like present day, we might open up our tasks or the things that we need to do next for the business. There's a lot of stuff we don't know, and there's a lot of stuff that's messy, and there's a lot of stuff that, to be honest, there are probably other people who are expert in this field or in this area that we're not yet. And so I think it's also just accepting the fact that you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to know it all, but I think the willingness to follow the voice of God, or the willingness to say yes, is the important piece. And you would be shocked at how everything kind of falls into place. It's a biblical principle, seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be added unto you. It's if you keep Him first, and if you keep that your ears open and your eyes open to follow Him, truly everything will fall into place. And if you need a testimony of that, just follow our story, because it's truly just been that. There's nothing that we've done out of a place of knowing. It's truly just been walking in the dark. So yeah, I guess all that to say, just do it. Just do the thing. So
Nice.
And this podcast is sponsored by Nike.
Yes, swoosh. I'm gonna just Photoshop the swoosh. Um,
Oh man, no, that was awesome, y'all. I mean, I would love to hear more just on those aspects of just following God in the dark. I don't know if you have a quick story with Chechi Chai and balancing all the rest of light. I know we're coming up on time, but I would just love to hear, like, just for an encouragement for people to say, like, hey, we didn't have it figured out. We started this in the middle of something. I don't know if there's one story for each of you that really quickly stands out in your mind, just to give the listeners some encouragement. It's like, hey, you know what, Chechi, like, that's good. That's easy on paper, but like, you don't know what's going on in my life. I would love to just, counter that thought that people might be having with a story that you might be able to share as we close out here.
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, I'm trying to think. There's like literally story after story. The first thing that came to my mind was our first pop-up. So this was my, again, my sophomore year. During this class, we just got that first, I think it was $2,000 of seed money. And I come home and I'm like freaking out with my parents. And I'm like, guys, like they asked us to do a pop-up this weekend to just kind of show people what we're about now that we've put this out there as a business. And so we got to get ready. And so the pop-up was happening on my on my campus, but on this very popular street in Nashville. But there's a lot of construction going on at the time. And basically the store that we were in was covered in scaffolding. There are a lot of elements that just didn't make us for an ideal time for a pop-up, but I internally am just so excited by what God's doing, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, guys, we've got to make 100 cutlets. We've got to make 500 cups of chai. We've got to be pat, right? We overestimate, overproduce. We show up to this pop-up shop again. The first time we have our own new signage, glass, frames, all the things. It's a windy day. We go set up, and they set us up outside. Within the first 5 minutes, all of our signage falls over. Everything shatters. We have trays and trays of cutlets. I think we sold 15. It was the traffic was so low. everything about. I remember my parents came that day. Like they were like, "Wow, we need to see what happens." And they like sat outside and just were watching, and they were like begging anyone to go inside and drink our chai. And like it was just so humbling in such a great way because again, like what Gigi was saying of like follow our story if you want to see that like God opens the doors, but he also is the one that ramps these things up and like for example, like we came into the pop-up maybe a few months later, we sold the most chai we've ever had. You know, like those kind of things happen not by our own strength, and it's always like a game of like look, we can project as much as we can plan as much as we can, but like truly there is no way to get it perfect. And you just have to keep showing up and believing that, you know, at the right time in the right place, like he will provide and you'll, you know, not feel so discouraged. But you've got to get through those first few times because it's just, you know, we're imperfect and we're humans and we're just yeah, getting started. But that's my first thing. I always tell people that story when they're just like, wow, like you guys look so put together. Like, when did you start a business? I'm like, trust and believe there were times where we felt like a failure.
Yeah, and I guess like my little tidbit to this is none of what you see was premeditated. Like we did not come into Chechi's Chai going, this is a strategy, this is how we're gonna get there. We did not do any of it. The story that she told of pitching it at her university, I think it was the second time she did it. I was walking up to the building that she was pitching this business to, and I said, okay, Lauren, here's the thing. I did not want to do business. At the time, I was in talent acquisition, and I was like, I'm pretty content here. Let's keep recruiting. Like, I don't want to do business. But I said, at the time, I think I'd already sensed something behind it where I was like, we've already won second place at one of these competitions. So interesting. I don't know why people are, you know, jumping on board with this. But I said, today, at this competition, if we win first place, I'm all in. If we get anything less than that, I'm like, I'm done. I'm waiting for us. And I almost like stacked the odds up against God, where I was like, you have like this much, like this is your window, and you've got to like come through for us. Everything else, I'm out. I'm done. And I just remember that day when she pitched.
I like did it horribly. Like I like fell apart. I had no cards. I threw them aside because I lost track.
And she came back, she sat next to me, and she literally goes, well, I'm so sorry. Like,
I'll do better
I'll do better next time. And I remember like a part of me was like, oh, thank God. Like, thank God. This isn't going to go well, and that is okay. And then they like called our name for first place. And I just remember my jaw just dropped. Because I was like, Lord, what? You know, so I think even in that sense of almost like take him at his word. Take him like what gives you that nudge. You can quite literally stack all the. I think about Jonah, where he was like, "I'm just gonna jump into the sea and go the other way," and God was like, "No, you're not. You're not. You're gonna do the thing that I tasked you to do."
Yeah.
And so even for us, this business has been one of those things where day after day, the Lord's like, "Will you just keep your eyes on me?" Because this is not by our might or by our strength, but truly just by the leading of his presence and his spirit, like every day, giving us the strength to do it.
Yeah, and being faithful with the little. It's like you might not have it all and you might not have like seed money or you might not see that opportunity first, but it's like if you are faithful for that one person that asked for 10 cups of chai at their baby shower, like do it. And like take every opportunity that you can to like, you know, put yourself out there, but also to just like continue this mission that God's put on your heart and like he will, you know, help you.
Yeah. Man.
I have one last tidbit. I feel like fear of man is something that like has invaded every. I'm gonna speak for the South Asian community, but like overarching across the world, you know. But the fear of man will be the one thing that will ultimately destroy your purpose and your assignment. And there have been times, even with us, these initial. I mean, we're only 2 years old, right? And so a lot of our opportunities and a lot of the things that we put our hands to, they've been so messy and so chaotic. And sometimes when people are like, so how's the business going? What are you guys up to? I've experienced firsthand the fear or that like shame in some sense of like, I don't know if I want to tell you this, but what I'm going to tell you right now is the fear of man or what they're going to think is the last factor or not even on the table of the things that should be guiding the trajectory of your life. And so that goes back to, when he says go, you go. You don't look around, you don't ask for opinions, you just go. And let your story be the thing that speaks for itself.
Mm, that's awesome. I was gonna say, man, there's just so many memories. Sure, Job, and for you too, just come to your mind when you were both just speaking of stories that we have in our lives that totally echo that. And just one verse that always came to my mind as you were talking about, hey, none of this was premeditated. Try to stack the odds against God, and he shows up. It's just that verse of, thy words a lamp unto my feet. Because you might not see the entire path, but enough knowledge for that next step, that day by day faithfulness, like you're talking about, Jess, which is just awesome to see. I know we're coming up on time. We're sort of wrapping up here. So how can people, keep up with your story, connect with their Chechis, and check out what's going on with Chechi's Chai?
Yeah. You can stay connected on our website, socials. Our website's chechischai.co, not com. Co is the new com. And then you can also check us out on our socials, Instagram. We're working this year to bring more life into that space of just kind of showing these behind the scenes of who we are, and being able to even bring other people into that of sharing stories and kind of saying why this matters. So yeah, definitely keep up with that to, similar to these kind of conversations, it's important to keep them going, and also just different people from different backgrounds and having them share. So we want to hopefully tap into that soon. And then, yeah, if you have any events, any weddings, all things, you can book us on our website. We'd be happy to be a part of them. But yeah.
Yeah. Really check out the website. There's a lot of cool stuff on there. I love the gift set. There's so many cool things on there. I think a couple things that come onto this conversation is, one, Jeswin, let's get on this Chachin's cookies thing. We'll put Parley G out of business. Do a collab, be amazing. But I think just the heart of seeing what you guys are doing, and that it's not just your identity as South Asian Indians, right? It's our identity in Christ that's really propelling this, and leaning into that really is really connecting community. And I love it when it's not a superficial connecting community, because every brand and every product wants to build an audience or build a following, and it's much more than that. And I love it when there's leaders in our community who do that. And I honestly, I think about my daughter, who's she going to look to as examples? And I think about that more and more for my son and my daughter. I'm like, who are they going to look to? And that's why we love these conversations, because it's going to be on the internet forever. And then when they're old enough to actually watch this, they can hear positive examples in our community, people who look like them and have the ability to make an impact, right? So we are with you all the way. Please order a lot of gift sets and chai and invite them to all the weddings and events. But Jess and Joanna, so happy to have you on. I feel like it's overdue to have you guys on, but love to share your story out to our audience, and looking forward to connecting with you soon.